wanted to talk to you today about the pros and cons of moving to or living in Bedford, Indiana. And I'm going to start out with the pros and save the cons for last, and I'm going to save my top tip for the very last, so you will stay to the end because you don't want to miss it. So if you are thinking about moving to Bedford, you might want to consider that if you've been looking in Monroe County or around Bloomington and you're not finding the house that you want at the price point that you want. Bedford is not a far drive from Bloomington, and it might be an area that you might want to consider. Bedford's about 30 minutes from Bloomington to the south in Lawrence County, and you can get a bigger bang for your buck in Lawrence County and particularly in the Bedford area. So the central location of Bedford is really nice because it's an easy way to get to the southern part of the state, and it's very, Highway 37 goes right through Bedford, and that is a very easy commute into Bloomington and even up to Indianapolis. So a lot of people choose to live there because of this option of the travel. It's easy to do. It just makes a small town community and that lifestyle very simple, and you can commute into a bigger city like Bloomington or an even metropolitan city like Indianapolis. So, and then you can come home to a rural or more peaceful lifestyle. The next thing would be the history of Bedford, the historic sites. Bedford is considered the limestone capital of the world, right? So there's a lot of limestone quarries around, and there's a lot of historic limestone buildings in the downtown area, as well as houses made out of limestone and some really cool, unusual houses around the city. So that is something that you might want to consider. You can actually get a little piece of history, and it won't cost you an absolute fortune like in Monroe County. Then there's the scenic beauty of Bedford. So Bedford is bordering Hoosier National Forest like we do in Monroe County, but Hoosier National Forest is so big it extends on down to Lawrence County, and there are caves all around that you can explore. There's Blue Spring Caverns, which is just to the south of Bedford, and there's the Milwaukee Trail, which is a good sized trail, and I've heard that the trail is expanding there also. There's also Spring Mill State Park, which is just to the south in Mitchell, Indiana, and there's just a lot of natural beauty around that you will want to take advantage of if you live in Bedford. Then there's the small town charm of Bedford. Bedford is a lot smaller than Bloomington. It's logging in at
roughly 14,000 people.
But don't let that scare you off. They do have a couple of grocery stores down there. They have a Lowe's, so that's always a good thing, right? And there's a couple discount stores. There's restaurants. They do have a Starbucks, but they have some other really nice locally owned restaurants around Bedford as well. So you're not going to be having to go very far to grab a bite to eat or go to a movie or things like that. And it's a friendly atmosphere. A lot of people know each other, and they are embracing people into their community. And of course, affordable housing. The housing is much more affordable in Lawrence County as well as Bedford, as I talked about before. But like I said, if you can't find anything in Bloomington and you want that smaller town charm like Bedford, then you are going to be able to find a house there at a more reasonable price and perhaps bigger than what you would have been looking at in Monroe County. So there's always that to consider. Now for the cons. There's limited educational opportunities. So Bedford doesn't have anything like Indiana University, of course, and their schools they have a public school system and private schools, but there might not be as many to choose from as there are in bigger cities. So that's something to consider. You will want to do your due diligence on that before you decide on a school, and just search that out because there is very limited school options in a smaller community. There's also limited diversity as well. So Bedford is a small town in southern Indiana. You will want to research that. If you want more diversity, Bloomington is better in that area than Bedford is, so you will want to check that out. Now, with living in a small town, you're also going to have to have a car to get around because they don't have public transportation down there. So that is something to consider as well. There's no public transportation options in Bedford. And they do have a hospital and some medical care facilities, but there is limited amenities like that. So, like I was talking about before, there are a couple grocery stores. There's an Aldi there, and there's also a JC, which is a smaller version that's owned by Kroger. So you might not get all the shopping that you need. If you're a big organic person or something like that, you might have to go to Bloomington to do your shopping. Same thing with restaurants. You're not going to get the full gamut on that because they just have limited options there. So same goes for shopping. There's limited options. You'll either have to go to Bloomington for that or to Indy or maybe even down to Evansville, something like that, to get more of a variety of amenities. And the biggest thing would be on the cons would be the limited job opportunities. So being a small town, they are just, the job opportunities are going to be small. So if you're in the healthcare field, you might find something locally, but you might have to go to Bloomington to work in healthcare or technology, things like that. So, and that can be challenging wherever you are in Lawrence County. So you might have to make the commute to Bloomington or Indy. So whatever it is, Bedford is a small community that embraces new people, but it is more of a rural lifestyle than something like Bloomington or of course Indianapolis. So those are some of the things that you might want to consider if you are planning a move to Bedford, Indiana or Bloomington, Indiana. And you want to be sure and check out my next video that will give you some tips doing your due diligence if you're moving here.